Hello and welcome back to my channel and the continuation of my solo classic RuneQuest campaign. We are up to episode 11 now. We are in the town of Dorowaith, the Axe Anvil. It's the middle of the evening. We've had quite a few interesting interactions. Just want to do a few recaps and action points first before we kick off in the session. First of all, I have an admission. Character sheets, they're still work in progress. I was supposed to still do Orstan, our dwarf, and also finish off, I think Barntar had some previous experience done. I had been slightly taken the eye off the ball a bit with either some of the other games that I'm playing, or there's been some life goes on, life activities which have got in the way, but they'll be ready for the next session. I guarantee it. Also, I did notice when we were doing when I was doing the transposing of information onto the character sheets, that for our want of a better word, peasant Varlorn, we'd missed out his traits when we were doing the exercise, and I think I can remember saying that I hadn't printed out the particular sheet because he came under Selenic. I thought he wouldn't really fall under the traditional Selenic trait, because that was more tailored around a city dweller or a townsperson in the Selenic Empire. I viewed Varlorn as, because he's from the peasant class, he would have probably more peasant traits. So I have actually managed to print off my little section now on peasants, and I retrospectively thought, why not do a little. Actually, I don't think I do actually. I think on this one I've only got 5, or maybe it's only 5 that I do have. Rural peasant background. Yeah, I think I only have 5 for this. Well, maybe I should have more. Okay, well, I thought I'd printed off something that I don't have. I've only got 5 just now. I'd rather use the full 10. So maybe scrap that for the next one. That's my first blooper. And if I knew how to edit these videos, because you might notice that they are quite raw, I would probably be able to take that bit out, but I can't. So I'm going to have to do Varlorn's peasant trait roll next time, and just pretend that you didn't really see that. Another little error that I did notice, and I think when I was seeing it at the time, I thought, no, you shouldn't really be doing this. I was going on about iron ore and the fact that Dorowaith was associated with that. I don't want iron ore to be a plentiful metal. It's got very special properties, iron, in this world. Just like in Glorantha, it's a very rare thing. It's exceptionally hard. It damages elder races. It's got a lot of superstition and cult mythology about it. I want that to continue in this. And also the bronze, it's the bones of the gods. It's like Glorantha, I'm saying that from the Gods' War, the bronze that you can find in the ground is derived from the Gods' War, when the gods were slain, and that represents the remains of their bones. So in place of iron ore, read bronze ore, and I will put that into the sheet afterwards. Also, moving on to the Dorowaith sheet, I have still got to do the economy, the authority, and the imperial influence, and update that so we'll basically have a bit of a resume of the town that we can use as an aid memoir. I will update that at the start of next session too. So it's a bit of a litany, this episode so far, but I promise that there will be far more happening as we proceed. Also, Languages. I was having a think about languages, and that was prompted by one of the subscribers who was asking me about what my thoughts were on languages. And there is quite a nice little set of rules in RuneQuest where you try to understand someone else's language, and you can have misunderstandings, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into the details of how that mechanic works just now, but I'm just going to give a high-level view of what my view on languages are. And I'm saying that there is a common language, and that's called Low Arcane. Now, Arcane, just read Arcane. So High Arcane and Low Arcane, they came from the time before the God's War, this precursor civilization. And the High Arcane was what the nobility classes spoke, and the Low Arcane was what any of the other classes. And this has somehow been transmuted forward in time into these different, more based forms. And there still is High Arcane, but it's very restricted, and it's almost not even equivalent to the Latin of medieval Europe. It's probably even more select than that. Melnibonean, it might be something like that. Just very, very rarely used. High Melnibonean. It's that kind of rarity. But Low Arcane is a common derivation of Low Arcane. And that is the common tongue across the Great Vale. And of course, there's the rise of Sellenic as well, which is viewed as a rival language, which is looking for dominance. Not intrinsically that different from Low Arcane. There's probably some common words, but Sellenic, the Sellenic Empire, being the Sellenic Empire, won their stamp of individuality and authority, and they view their language as being very, very important. I think if you are from France, there is a kind of very kind of patriotic view of the French language. And maybe the Sellenic have a very similar view that their language defines them. Maybe in England and in Britain we're a bit more relaxed about our language. It's just an assumption that that's the language that's spoken. Whereas the French, they take a different view. It's certainly when they had the colonial empires. They almost like enforced French speaking in their areas, in their colonies, whereas English was probably a bit more kind of laissez-faire, the attitude about it. So I think Sellenic, if you have a kind of a European equivalent, it's probably like French and English. Tutorials. I mentioned tutorials in my update the other day, and I was quite excited about that, and I'm going to have that as a new kind of line, a new product line I'm going to be trailblazing for each of my RPGs that I play. And I thought maybe for the RuneQuest one, I'll have a central character, and we'll be following the path of that. But I also thought it might be quite a nice idea to bring in the life experience of the characters that we've got in here, which I mentioned in one of the previous episodes for my RuneQuest sessions, and that thing where we would be relating by the fire of what the barbarians' deeds were, all the stuff that we generated on this, you put down it into service history or previous experience or traits and that type of stuff. I thought that might be quite good as something to put into those tutorials. Also on just a bit more admin, set up logs to capture details of adventure threads, NPCs and world lore. Now already with about 2 or 3 sessions under our belt where we've actually been interacting and adventuring, I've generated quite a lot of what I would call adventure threads. So we had Beristar, the sage. That was quite a fortuitous meeting with him. He imparted a lot of useful information with a lot of hints of adventure, and you're following up with the Sages Guild, that type of thing. And also, the fact that we came across a number of NPCs that I can jot down. So I'll have little kind of almost like logs of each of those, which are a bit like kind of action points as well to do. Like a to-do list. I had adventure threads with to-do list of saying, maybe you should push this one forward or whatever. And then we'll have our log of NPCs and also world lore. And as you know, talking about world lore, I quite like to introduce, and I have already been introducing, the storyteller and Skald segments. So we had the Skald, you know, doing his bardic stuff at the start of one of our first introductions. You know, I'll have the storyteller as well, and they'll be used as vehicles to convey the world lore during adventures. So there might be like a little where we get taken out of reality, and I can weave the little spell of the storyteller or the Skald relating something about world lore, which will add to our understanding of this the Great Veil. Now, deliberately, I'm saying that this episode is heavily scripted session, and to shape the narrative. So what I'm using this session for is basically a setup before we commence solo adventuring, and I've decided to go for an introductory mini campaign. Now, I'll explain that in far more detail when we get to the end of the session, but in essence, it is my kind of little version of well, I thought hard and long about what would be a nice way to get our characters get the sleeves rolled up, but it still maintain a bit of intimacy and a bit of personalization, and not be a sprawling adventure. And I thought, you know, remember Apple Lane? Well, why don't I do my little version of my view of what an Apple Lane is, and I'll create my own Apple Lane-ish type setup, which will be based on a small village out in the borderlands near Dorwaith. It has some either crisis points or happenings. It has areas roundabout of interest, you know, potentially ruins, that type of thing. It has some very interesting NPCs that we can interact with, and we can just use it, as I say, as an intimate entry to my RuneQuest world, and introduce things like combat and magic and rune cults and all that good stuff, but in a very self-contained little micro environment, before we spread out further into the greater world. So that's the basic, the premise of this episode is to set us up on that path. Okay, so the ongoing adventures in the Axe Anvil. So our drinking goes on, and we had been drinking with this chap called Valish Himbert. He'd been ranting a bit of a political agitator. He seems to be on the authoritarian side, you know, the side of the government. Very probably quite anti-imperial. He's kind of flying the flag of independence, and making himself quite known in the Axe Anvil. We are probably looking for an excuse to try and disengage with this chap. You know, he's served his purpose. he's drunk Barntar under the table, full pure Barntar. Then Orstan arrives. Hooray! Our dwarf. He's weary after a long journey to join the party. He is late. Yes, so we remind him, Orstan, you're a bit late. But what events does he regale as part of his journey, and how much do we believe them? So I've got a famous mini game where I have 4 different options for Orstan, and what has he been doing on his journey, and why is he late? And it comes down to a D4 resolution of that. So I'll get my D4 out, and I've got these 4 little paragraphs. Let's find out what he gets first, what his excuse is for him being so late. And then we're going for the number 2 option. So he's saying, unfortunately, I got sidetracked negotiating a trade deal for rare gemstones with a notoriously stubborn clan of mountain dwarves. A negotiation that stretched on for weeks. Oh, you won't believe it. It just went on and on and on. I could not get rid of these guys. They were constantly going on about, oh, there's not the right quality, and oh, yes, it's got the wrong shape, this gemstone. And, you know, how much do we believe him? Yeah, well, he's late. The other ones could have been, he was involved in the discovery of a new incredibly rich bronze ore vein and has been spending weeks mapping it out, securing the claim before he could leave. Well, I suppose that's kind of down his street, and he would probably be kind of sucked into that kind of activity, and it would be quite a distraction for a dwarf. Um, I think that is probably quite a good one. The one that he's mentioned, the fact that the rare gemstones, it sounds quite plausible. I think he could get the benefit of the doubt with that with the party. Um, he was delayed by a spontaneous weeks-long ale-tasting competition in a hidden mountain stronghold, a sacred event he simply couldn't abandon. Well, that does sound a very kind of dwarvish thing to do. A weeks-long ale-tasting competition? Maybe that's stretching it a bit. He didn't come up with that excuse, so we don't have to bother about it. And the final one, while traversing a treacherous pass, he stumbled upon an ancient, long-lost dwarven anvil and spent considerable time ensuring its safe, secret burial for later return. Well, I think that sounds like a bit of a yarn, and I think if he'd come up with that one, we'd be going, come on, Orstan, get the drinks in and stop wasting our time. So I think we do believe him, and we say, well, that sounds as though you were really quite an intense negotiation. You better get a drink. And he says, look, oh yeah, it looks as though I have missed the party. I need to catch up. So after bidding Valish good evening, with the excuse they need to discuss business with Orstan. So they've had their excuse. They can disengage with this chap. They return to their table near where Breck is serving. They are getting a little drunk now, but Barntar has miraculously revived himself and claims he's had a vision. So he pulls himself together. He snaps awake. He says, "Oh, where have I been? I've had a vision." It's like some sort of revelation he's had. The rest of the characters laugh and tease him. They say, "Oh, come on, Barntar, you're just a bit drunk. You can take your ale," and they're all having a bit. So the rest of the characters, they're laughing and teasing him. He ignores their banter. He's quite serious about it, and seeks out the storyteller, who was relating the history of Dorowaith, with the intention of having him explain his vision. So he thinks, all right, he can explain my vision. He's almost like really switched on to this idea. And of course, he has to save face too because of his noble background. He has to show that, these commoners, I'm not going to be trifled with, and no one laughs at my expense. So he finds the aforementioned storyteller, whose name happens to be Jareth Tailweaver. So this was the chap that we found at the start of the I think it was 2 episodes ago. He was going on about the history of Dorowaith, and just the fact that it has been built on these ruins of an ancient civilization, and he hinted at some of the secrets and mysteries of the place. So we've caught up with him again, and we find that he is in discussion with a couple of artisans and giving them an insight into the religious practices in Dorowaith. So, he's having a bit of a talk to these artisans. He's kind of, he's got them in his spell, and you get the feeling that Jareth Tailweaver, he is quite a charismatic, and he's got a very articulate voice, and he almost guiles people into a kind of sense of relaxation, lulls them in, and then he can relate anything he really just wants to talk about, and he just feels in the mood to talk about the cults in the town, and maybe just give his 2 penneth on each of them. He instructs Barntar to sit and listen. He says, "Sit and listen." He is very direct and surprises the young nobleman. So I think he's twigged that Barntar's a bit drunk, and he just doesn't want any interruption into the spell that he's weaving with these individuals. The rest of the party, they seem to be quite interested. They drift across, and Jareth finds that he has the crowd's attention and begins. So he then explains that there are 3 cults in the town which are worshipped in the majority. First of all, we have Taranis, the storm god, master of skies and warfare, and his rune affinities are air, mastery, and movement. His mythology The storm god is a dynamic, often temperamental deity wielding lightning bolts and thunder, so your classic storm god. He governs the weather, but also justice, oaths, and the might of warriors. He is often associated with mountains and high places. During the Gods' War, he was a formidable combatant and a general among the divine forces. He punishes oathbreakers and those who commit grave injustices. So that is the story behind Taranis. He sounds as though he's into retribution and terrorizes some of his followers. Their beliefs, his followers are often fierce, independent, and value strength, loyalty, justice, and martial prowess. They view the Empire's ordered expansion as a challenge to their own freedom and a sign of weakness in their enemies. So they're quite combative against the Empire, and they don't like the fact that anybody else cooperates with them because they think, well, that just shows that you've given in. You've got no backbone like us, Taranis followers, initiates. So the second cult that Jareth talks about is Elwyn, the Earth Mother, nurturer and protector. And her rune affinities are Earth, fertility, and man. And her mythological background, he relates that the Earth Mother is often seen as the oldest, the very ground from which life springs. She is the source of all growth, the provider of sustenance, and the ultimate resting place of the dead. Some myths suggest she existed before the Gods' War, perhaps even giving birth to some of the other deities. She mourns the scars left by the Gods' War and actively resists the creeping corruption of chaos, which is an anathema to her very being. So, more of a gentle deity, not your thunder and lightning approach of Taranis. She's into peace and understanding to a limit. And her followers' beliefs, they value tradition, community, stability, and stewardship of the land. They often view the Selenic Empire's expansion as a violation of the Earth's natural order. Ooh, yes. So they're kind of like a Greenpeace group, quite into the Earth, into maintaining order against what they view as heretical interlopers like the Selenic Empire, and my goodness, that thing, chaos, that's awful. And then the third cult that Jareth talks about is Asarion, the Wayfinder, often known as Silvertongue, and his rune affinities are movement, man, and truth. And his myths depict the Wayfinder, as he's called, as a clever, quick-witted, and independent spirit who wandered the world after the Gods' War, discovering hidden paths and connecting disparate peoples. And his followers, they believe in the flow of prosperity through trade and travel, valuing cleverness, communication, and adaptability as essential virtues for navigating life's journey and fostering connections. And Jareth hints that Taranis holds sway among the governing nobles, but many of the citizenry associate themselves with Elwyn and Asarion for practical reasons associated with livelihood and outlook. So the upper strata, Taranis is the cult. Any of the lower classes, they tend to either go for Elwyn or Asarion, depending on their commercial or lifestyle outlook. Basically there doesn't seem to be too much conflict. And he does say, remember, this is just a little aside that I'm bringing in. Remember that cults in RuneQuest are not just religions. They are also social, political, and military organizations. So RuneQuest has the cult as a very, probably quite a unique organization. It's almost like a state within a state. And that's the way that these are viewed. There doesn't, as I say, doesn't seem to be too much conflict between the three. If you had the Selene goddess come on the scene, it would be a different story, I have no doubt. But Selene was not mentioned at any stage apart from the intersection with any of these cults. So At the end of that, the characters now feel they have an extensive grounding in the town's culture, history, religion, and economy. And that's the thing that I'm going to put, now that we are at that stage, I'm going to put into our worksheet on Doorway, and we'll have a comprehensive view of what this little mini city is all about, what makes it tick, what are its major religions, what is its economy all about. Okay. I'm saying now that the characters, they're getting tired, and they just have one final question. Where do newly arrived adventurers go to seek employment and reward? So they go back and ask Breck, he's the innkeeper from memory, and he tells them about the Adventurers Guild and how that an outpost of this guild has been recently established in the town and has given the call for talent to apply in return for guidance. Read into guidance anyway, anything you wish. That is about to be explained and revealed before your eyes. So the next day, the party follows the directions Breck has given and head to where they believe the guild is located in the town. The weather is cold, but the sun is shining, and they feel a lightness in their hearts. They have heard that the guild is the new beacon of hope and a fascinating melting pot of cultures and beliefs. This organization isn't just a band of mercenaries, it's a direct response to the Chaos War and embodies the fragile new unity forming across the land. So this is a cause that they can sign up to. They feel quite motivated by this higher ideal. It is appealing to all their adventuring spirit. Let us follow their desires and find out more about this Adventurers Guild. We are all intrigued. So after an interesting meander through Doorway streets and alleys, they arrive at their destination. And the building is a large, solidly built stone townhouse with what appears to be a fortified roof and a very strong wooden and metal reinforced door. This acts as the guild's headquarters in the town. Okay, so good start. A big strong structure, quite imposing. There's a bit of fortification on the top, probably just recently added just to give it a bit of authority. The doorway is manned by a couple of young warriors of the local hill tribes. They enthusiastically welcome the characters into the main entrance hall once the characters declare their desire to join and to be part of this venture. So they welcome, as soon as the characters say, yes, we've come along to find out what the Adventurers Guild has got to offer. We are adventurers that have just come to this town. We are motivated towards this guiding principle. We have heard a lot of things about this. And the young warriors say, yes, you've come to the right place. Come in here and wait in this main hall. I will go and consult my superior. So the characters are asked to wait while one of the guards leaves through a door. So time passes. And then an amazing sight greets the characters. A very dignified and sumptuously attired duck steps out from an antechamber and quacks in the common speech. Hail, visitors, welcome, I say, for by the Sacred Heart you walk upon the hallowed ground where valor takes wing and chaos meets its terrible doom. My name is Sir Drake Boldbeak. I am at your service and will lead you onward to my lord the Guildmaster of this most noble order. So the voice that booms is rich and resonant. He is a duck of impressive stature, clad not in simple leathers, but in what appears to be finely worked bronze scales that shimmer faintly, perhaps even etched with the stylized patterns of leaping fish or flowing water. A distinctive, highly polished bronze ceremonial staff is gripped firmly in one of his webbed hands, while his helmet, seemingly crafted to resemble a fearsome, open-beaked fowl, crowns his head. A cloak of rich blue silk flows behind him. So, If a character induces a positive reaction roll, he will puff up in pleasure. Otherwise, an exasperated honk might pass from his bill. So we are looking for a positive reaction for our duck. So my goodness, this is probably the most exotic thing that you can probably get in one of your first encounters. I had to get the duck in. I love ducks. And I just like this idea of this almost Shakespearean theatrical type of duck, regaling his past exploits. Let's find out where my encounter tables are. After all this, I thought it was in here. I'm sure it is. I think I'm a bit carried away with my duck. Where is the encounter tables? I thought it was in here. Here we go, response charts. Okay, so I'm saying if I get anything positive on the friendly one, look at our percentage dice. Let's find out what we get with this impressive duck called Sir Drake Boldbeak. What's he going to think? So we ignore the D4, which shouldn't have been in there. We get a 64. So that is positive. I'm saying anything 75 or less. So we get a positive reaction from him. He puffs himself up a bit. His feathers puff up. We don't get that honk coming out from his bill. And also, if one of the characters rolls an intelligence score, they will realize he probably appreciates flattery. So let's find out from our characters. In fact, we'll include Orstan in this too. What's his intelligence? He's got a 13. Should we let him have a shot? We'll do Orstan, one of his firsts. See if he realizes. He gets a 19, so he doesn't notice. So maybe there's the racial thing, and he doesn't really quite understand what makes ducks tick. So let's do a human. We'll do someone like, let's do Serana. I think Serana's got an intelligence of, I've got +2 there. I think it's a 13 again. Intelligence of 13. So she does, she realizes it, and because she's quite charismatic, she'll be able to appropriately deliver this praise. And I'm saying that mentions of beautiful plumage or him being a most magnificent duck will go down a treat. So that's the kind of line that she goes down. And it's just the beautiful plumage. You know, aren't you the most magnificent duck? This is such an occasion for us to come across such an exotic creature as yourself. Saying in quite a nice way, and the duck would not be offended by that type of talk. He's probably heard a lot worse, being the only duck in Doorway. He has the most theatrical manner in terms of speech and gestures, and narrates his heroic exploits as he takes the character up some stairs and into the depths of the guild house. He explains that they need to answer some questions before having an audience with the guildmaster. So we've got our initial vetting. He takes them through to a room where a veteran guild member, a battle-scarred sergeant called Vadranus the Steadfast, asks the following questions in order. So we can roll a reaction from him for each, and any fail, he will either display suspicion or ask a series of additional sub-questions, which are both tedious and time-consuming. So, characters are lined up. He's giving us a very hard stare. He's this battle-hardened old sergeant, big scar down his cheek. Vadranus the Steadfast. He will not tolerate any deviation from the truth. First thing he asks all of us in turn: reasons for being here. Are they genuinely seeking to fight chaos? He can triage whether they are a spy, a bandit, or an infiltrator. So, what does he think of us? with that line of inquiry. So he's not happy with some of our explanations. He says, I do want a bit more evidence. You know, I don't like some of your backstories. It doesn't seem to add up. You know, come on, you've got to come up with something better for me. What's it going to be? And he starts to ask some quite probing questions about their past. You know, in fact, almost to get to the point where some of the characters are starting to, you know, the tears are welling up with the history that they have to relate. And after another series of interrogations, he says, right, okay, you pass. I understand you now. You seem willing to fight this awful spawn of chaos. And then he asks about their basic competence. So a quick assessment of their gear, bearing, and any claims of skill. So all the characters say, oh yeah, I'm quite good with the broadsword, or I can do this with my one-handed spear. I can, you know, do a backward flip and all that sort of stuff. And he's saying, right, okay, he's making notes. What does he think of all our accumulated stories? He is very impressed. He really, in fact, he says, yes, you seem to be giving off tremendous, you know, almost like natural ability. You look as though you've had quite a bit of experience, you know, particularly you, Ulvar, with your barbarian lifestyle. The fact that you're a bit older than some of the adventurers that come. We often get these raw 16-year-olds, and my goodness, you know, they don't even know where their toes are. You know, it's ridiculous. So he is really very impressed with us. He asked the final question, which isn't that important, but cult affiliation. So while the guild is inclusive of most cults, they want to know where the characters' loyalties and spiritual strengths lie. Now, I've said that the characters haven't really disclosed which particular cults they have. However, we do have a religious conviction, and we know that Barntar's pretty high on the scale. He's at an 8. Orstan's pretty low. Ulvar doesn't really care. Varlons and Serana, they're quite pious. So Barntar is almost like the zealot. So he's kind of a bit prickled with Barntar, but he says, yes, I'm sure you can focus your drive towards the fight, the common fight against chaos. And Barntar says, yes, I'm absolutely on the page. We get an 80. So he says, well, I still want evidence that, you know, tell me a bit more about your religious stuff. And Serana and Varlon, you seem to be quite keen on your tribal stuff. And this you know, this Selenic religion, Varlon, you know, how tied were you to that? He asks another series of questions about that. Getting a bit heated. 52. So no, he's okay now. We feel like we've got over the hump. We've had to be quite grilled, and certainly on the basic confidence, we've passed with flying colours. He was delighted with our natural skill and ability, or what it seemed like. You know, maybe some of our equipment and whatever was quite impressive. And then, but you had to ask a few more sub questions on our reasons for being there, and the cult affiliation seemed to cause a few problems. So it looks as though we're past the initial vetting. He says, right, I think you're ready to go and meet my master. Come with me. And he takes us down to a door, knocks on the door. You hear a deep voice saying, yes, enter. We enter into a room. And we are introduced to the guild master. His name is Harkon Ethelbright. And to the surprise, and in some instances the feeling of discomfort among the characters, he happens to be a grizzled imperial centurion, or ex-centurion, who has put aside some of his Selenic arrogance for the greater good. So this Adventurers Guild, it's a universal thing across the Great Vale. It unites everyone. People are drawn towards it, and this Harkon Ethelbright seems to have relinquished his centurion role in the Imperial Guard, and has decided, this is the life for me. I've found my vocation, and he does inspire. He's a very charismatic and enigmatic person. He almost like gives off this aura. The characters are quite taken by him. even though he has imperial background. He welcomes the character into his refined and well-appointed chambers and congratulates them on passing the tests and reaching this stage. He explains that Vadranus often weeds out individuals who fail to meet the guild's exacting standards, so they have done well reaching this stage. He introduces the overall concept of the guild and then lays out its terms. So, first thing he talks about is the conception. And he says the Adventurers Guild stands as a recently formed and desperate response to the escalating Chaos War in the Great Vale, uniting disparate peoples like the Selenic Empire's disciplined warriors, independent borderland tribes, free city folk of the Vale, and even the elusive Eldar races under an urgent mandate to mobilize talent, train heroes, and spearhead the fight against the encroaching chaos waste. Operating from fortified outposts, the Guild demands proven competence, unwavering loyalty to its anti-chaos mission, and adherence to its strict code of conduct, forcing a pragmatic unity among its diverse members who must set aside ancient rivalries to protect the entire vein. So that is its mission statement. That is why it is being created. That is what it wants to do. And then he briefly goes through, well, these are the rules of the guild that you would have to adhere to if you want to join. There's going to be no internal strife, and in his words, he says, inside these walls, your gods and tribes are your own, but your quarrels are left outside. We fight chaos and only chaos. Infighting helps only the enemy. And also, you must obey orders. When on guild business, you follow the command chain. Disobedience in the field can cost lives. This is from my Centurion days too, and he almost has a little bit of an aside on that, a few anecdotes. Share information, any lore, any threat, any weakness you discover about chaos. You bring it here. We all need to know. Stamps his hand on the table. No retreat without orders. We do not abandon our posts or our comrades. Cowardice will not be tolerated. So he kind of growls after that statement. Protection of the innocent. Our fight is for the Vale's free peoples. We protect them where we can, not prey on them. And included in my free people definition are all the peoples of the Empire too, because we are free under the goddess. He doesn't really kind of labour that point too much. You can see a few wrinkles, kind of noses being wrinkled a bit. Sacrifice is expected. This is a war, and sacrifices will be made. You will put the guild's mission and the Vale before your own comfort. So that has been us set up with the rules of the guild. We say yes, we are for that. That sounds very motivating. Thank you very much. So let's see what else Harkin tells us about. And he says, well, your entry requirements, proven competence, and it looks as though you passed. He says, we don't need raw recruits for training. We need those who already know how to wield a sword, cast a spell, or track a beast. You'll be tested. And then you'll have to make the oath of the United Shields. You will swear an oath to the guild, to your comrades, and to the Great Vale itself to fight chaos until your last breath. We say, yes, bring it on. No chaos taint. We brook no corruption, any sign of chaos in mind or body, and you will be cast out or worse. The very thought, we say, we all together, in unison, we're quite caught up with this process. It's almost like an initiation into a cult. Contribution, you must prove your worth. Everyone here earns their place. That brings us to your first task. Okay, so we are coming to the end of this session. As I said, my idea at the start was to give a very narrative, structured, almost like this is the process that we're going to go down. Hopefully you found that, it's given you a bit of background to what this Adventurers Guild's all about and how I am setting the characters up to go to a place of our choosing, and we can get them doing all the good adventuring stuff, but with an overall direction, and also a cause. You know, it's quite nice maybe to have that in the back of their minds, that they are fighting for something, a higher ideal. And the Guildmaster looks the characters over, then gestures to a map. He points to Dorowaith and then a village 15 leagues to the east. And what I'm saying, this initial mission will provide a clear objective, will introduce the characters to the immediate dangers of chaos, and sets the stage for their integration into the broader Adventurers Guild and the Great Vale's War. So that's the objective of this first mission. And what I'm saying, in total, it's going to be multiple session, multi-layered mini campaign, which will involve extensive investigation, exploration, and adventuring into my version of an Apple Lane setup. So we're going to get the old Great Vale version of Apple Lane, a little village that's got something terrible happening to it. It's got some very interesting residents that we have to interact with. You know, who are we going to be talking to? Any more ducks, surely, or maybe a dragon newt or two. Who knows? You know, I think having this in a little microcosm, a little mini campaign to start, we can test out all the rules and have a bit of fun with those, and then before we expand out, all within the context of having a grand mission. And if we do this mission well and go back to Harkin with positive results, which he will give us the criteria, what the success factors are, and if he manages to tick off enough of them, we will get glory and renowned. So Harkin says this mission will be explained to you anon, but finally I want to say to you, you might be wondering what you get in return from the guild. And we say, oh, just the glory of the fight against chaos. But no, let me tell you. And he says, to be clear, the guild's functions to support initial adventurers on their path, and each adventurer will know when it is the right time to move beyond. But they will still feel indebted to honour the guild's rules and requirements. So this is just a transitory thing. The Adventurers Guild is not for life. The people that work for it are seen to be quite embedded in it, but the adventurers that come through, they are on to greater, and it's almost like a feeder to becoming a hero. You'll get access to diverse skills in magic. Members will gain exposure to a wider array of combat techniques, survival skills, and runic magic than they would within their isolated cults. Now, probably less on the runic magic because we're not really going to reach that level, but certainly maybe on some of the combat techniques and survival skills. I might have some little tweaks there that I'm thinking about. The protection and support network, this is probably the biggest gain that the adventurers are going to have. The guild offers a measure of security and camaraderie in a dangerous world. Members operate with the backing of a larger organization, benefiting from shared resources, intelligence, and medical aid. A guild outpost provides a safe haven, supplies, and a place to rest and recover. So we'll have places out in the wild that we can rely on. When I say out in the wild, probably in the frontier regions. These guilds outposts aren't going to be popping up all over the place. They're going to be quite rare. But when we do find them, they are little havens for us to, because we have the membership, we've sworn the oath, we get entry. A pathway to heroism and renown. For individuals, the guild offers a clear path to proving their worth and gaining renown beyond their local village or cult. Successful missions against chaos brings recognition, and truly heroic deeds can earn legendary status, even among disparate peoples who rarely acknowledge each other's heroes. Well, that's probably a bit more of advertising, but it's saying this is a way for you to get to heroism. On a pragmatic level, you'll get your support network. You'll get access to some lucrative skills. From a personal thing, that you'll be able to get the chance of heroism and renown, reputation. Specialized training in lore, the guild actively studies chaos, sharing insights into its various manifestations, weaknesses, and the dangers it poses. This specialized knowledge is invaluable and often impossible to acquire outside the guild circles, equipping members with the expertise needed to truly counter the blight. Now, this is a bit more of an intellectual side of it, which the characters are probably not going to be involved in that much. But that is an aspect that it's almost like a kind of, it collects information about the enemy. So know your enemy type thing. And that's the kind of substrata in the guild. And they are probably linked to the sages. So Birkin that we were talking to, maybe he has links to the Adventurers Guild, and they are sharing, cross-referencing information, and we'll probably have another encounter with Birkin, and that might be related to some of the things that are going on in the Adventurers Guild. And finally, purpose and belonging. In a world reeling from ancient wars and facing a new terrifying enemy, the guild offers a clear purpose and a sense of belonging to something larger than oneself. For many, it's a chance to actively fight for the survival of their home and people, providing a hope in grim times. So, because chaos has intensity in certain areas to a greater extent than, say, here, the people feel that the guild is just it's almost like a lifesaver. It's come in and it's preserving their way of life or helping to, and it's seen as a positive thing. And to other areas, it hasn't really got the message over yet because they have not been directly impacted. But there is a feeling that chaos is encroaching. The fact that there's an impediment to create a structure and an organization like this, and it has unified across cultural and national lines, is credit to the fact that this is a dangerous and malignant evil that they face, which is a unifying effect on the Great Veil. Okay, I know that was quite theory heavy again, and narrative heavy, but as I said, it had a purpose. It was designed to set up. Hopefully the next stage is going to be quite interesting, where we have this mini campaign, and I'm going to have my Apple Lane-esque setup. Who cannot forget? That's it. You've obviously had to play Apple Lane first, but that had a lot of. It's not going to be a complete clone of it because I think that would be a waste of time. And in fact, I can't really remember it in that much detail myself. I just remember the overall concepts, the fact that you had a nice little village and with some very interesting NPCs. You had some nice places to go to in the village. They had a threat. There were some places of mystery around. It was a self-contained, intimate setting, and that's what I want really for this campaign to get it started. Okay. I think that's enough for today. Say the next session, Harkin's going to outline the exact mission. He's going to say where to go, and the characters are going to go there. And hopefully I've got all my little admin points covered up, where I was talking about character sheets, etc., etc. And I'll have my little write-up of Dorowith as well to present. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching that episode, and I'll see you next time.